Imagine this. The moment is just ordinary. You're sitting on a bus, maybe, trying to mentally run through your checklist for the day.
It's just the mundane stuff, the architecture of your routine.
Exactly. You're Anna from Clarice Lispector's story, Amour, and you've achieved what she calls a pacified life. Everything's predictable.
Safe, controlled. You wear the right clothes, choose the right movies based on reviews.
You've carefully sort of quarantined any real feeling, any threat of genuine disruption.
Right, you've built this whole life designed not to explode. It's like a fortress against the truth of just being.
Precisely. But then while you're riding that bus, something breaks through, just shatters that wall between your neat internal world and the raw reality outside. You see a blind man chewing gum. Just that. An image so immediate, so nakedly physical, it destabilizes everything instantly.
Yeah, the sheer physicality of it. A blind man just exposed, doing this mechanical, almost, vulgar act of chewing gum. That specific detail, that precise observation plunges Anna's world into what the source calls a dark voraciousness.
It's terrifying. But crucially, not because it's dangerous in a physical way, it's because it injects pure, unvarnished reality into her sanitized routine.
It's like this agonizing, immediate feeling, almost a strange kind of benevolence, but one that feels utterly destabilizing, an awareness of the world's true, maybe brutal existence.
And that moment, that terrifying clarity.
Yeah.
That's what we're seeking today.
That confrontation with the immediate, the unvarnished truth, well, that's the absolute signature of Clarice Lispector, isn't it?
Absolutely. The Ukrainian-born Brazilian novelist. And it's incredible. She wrote her first really groundbreaking novel, Near to the Wild Heart, when she was only, 19?
19 years old. Unbelievable. She basically made these moments of disruption her entire subject. She wasn't really writing about plot in the traditional sense. She wrote about the instant of being.
And that feeling, that kind of existential whiplash, that disruption, that's exactly our mission for this deep dive. Welcome. If you, listening right now, are maybe struggling with the sheer volume of modern life, the information overload, or maybe just feeling the relentless weight of chaos these days, well, we think Lispector might offer something useful.
Yeah, we've looked through a whole stack of sources, literary analysis, biography, reader responses. And what emerges is that Lispector's work, which can seem dense or lyrical, it's actually more than just literature.
It's like a philosophical toolkit, really practical for navigating profound disorder.
We often try to cope with chaos by, imposing more structure, making a bigger list, a tighter schedule, a 5-year plan.
Right. More control.
But Lispector suggests that whole approach is basically doomed. It misses the point.
So our thesis today, what we want to explore, is that her solution for dealing with the frightening fluidity of reality isn't about imposing control at all. It's about cultivating a terrifying precision of attention.
It's not about control. It's about achieving radical contact with the moment, whatever that moment holds.
Okay, so let's dig into that core philosophy. Why is Lispector's writing so famously resistant to traditional structure? I mean, she seems almost allergic to the usual narrative constraints, doesn't she?
She really does. It's because she fundamentally rejected that deep human compulsion to organize everything, to put the universe in neat little boxes.
Like Aristotle trying to give stories a clear beginning, middle, end.
Exactly. That whole exercise for Aristotle was about satisfying our need for order, for predictability. Lispector saw that kind of structure as, well, frankly, as a lie. A comfortable cage we build to avoid seeing the world as it actually is.
So that compulsion to structure, to define everything, that's the enemy, in her view.
Pretty much. She famously said something like, to define is to limit. The moment you label something, you kind of stop experiencing it fully.
You've capped its potential, sterilized it almost.
Yes, and she didn't want to limit existence. She wanted to celebrate the inherent explosive chaos of life itself, not deny it.
But it's important to clarify, this isn't chaos as just messiness or randomness, right? It's something deeper.
Oh, absolutely. It's chaos as an underlying truth, like a vast natural order that exists way beyond our tidy human categories. One source described her work as embracing a profound organic disorder that nevertheless hints at an underlying order.
I like that. It's like accepting the jungle is impossibly tangled, but that entanglement follows its own ancient, maybe even flawless rhythm. We're just usually too busy drawing maps to actually notice it.
Exactly that. What she's really searching for, I think, is the raw sensation of existence itself. Before we slap a category on it, before we judge it as good or bad.
She talks about the nucleus made of a single instant. That phrase just sticks with you.
It's powerful, isn't it? How do you capture something that, by its nature, resists definition?
Right.
Well, in her novel, The Chandelier, there's this amazing description. It's the moment before the quality came to rest on things, and before reality became, quote, unbalanced in tomorrow.
Wow. So before the label, the definition.
Yes. Think about how we constantly categorize our moments. This is productive, this is sad, this is boring. She wants that terrifying, pure presence of the instant before that judgment solidifies.
That sounds intense, maybe even painful. If you can't label it, you can't really control it, can you?
It is painful. She absolutely recognized that the act of simply being, just existing in that raw, undefined state, is inherently anguishing. Why? Because the essential thing, the core of it, would always escape words spoken.
Language fails.
Language fails. It's too vast. Our brains try to protect us with names and definitions, but that very protection also cuts us off from the deepest kind of contact with life.
So she's trying to almost bypass the cognitive brain, get to something more primal, more visceral.
I think so. The narrator in The Hour of the Star actually talks about writing not as some purely intellectual thing, but writing with my body.
With the body.
Yeah. Seeking out the moist fog of words. A language that isn't clean and analytical, but sounds transfused with unequal shadows. It's trying to reach a messy bodily truth that our neat, logical language just smooths over and, in a way, falsifies.
That image writing with the body, hitting the nerves rather than the rational brain, that feels like a perfect encapsulation of her approach to chaos. If we can't impose order from the outside, we have to sharpen our attention to the point of raw contact on the inside. Which brings us nicely to the practical side of this deep dive. We want to frame her philosophy as, let's say, 5 micro tools, small, actionable insights, and each one will be followed by a tiny, doable practice for you, the listener.
Yeah, these aren't about making grand life plans. They're more like surgical strikes of observation, things you can do anytime, anywhere, at your desk, on the bus, in the kitchen, just to anchor yourself in the present reality, right in the midst of all the noise.
Okay, first micro tool. We're calling it attention as contact. The core idea, the thesis here, is that true atenção, that's the Portuguese word she uses, meaning deep attention. It means pushing past the limits of our concepts, our language, to achieve this really intimate, almost humid intimacy with the living reality of the moment.
And you feel the struggle in her own writing intensely, like in Agua Viva Living Water, which is this amazing sort of nonfiction text. The narrator, who's a painter, talks about the sheer agony of trying to capture raw experience.
Right.
She wants to paint splendidness, something, quote, raw and bloody and full of saliva. But she knows the instant she makes those feelings explicit, she says, I lose the humid intimacy.
That really hits home, doesn't it? That's such a modern dilemma. We feel this constant pressure to categorize our experiences, articulate them for others, summarize them neatly.
Put it in a tweet.
Exactly. But the moment we give the feeling a definitive name, it loses its charge, its vitality, becomes kind of sterile.
Absolutely. And Lispector confirms this. She acknowledges that, yes, the word is her basic material as a writer, but she insists the secret meaning emanates that goes beyond words. It's the non-word, that space of pure, undefined presence, that's what, quote, incorporates the bait. And she even suggests the way to salvation, or at least insight, is through writing absent-mindedly.
Absent-mindedly, like a deliberate surrender of that need for cognitive control.
Yes, almost a rebellious letting go. It's like the chaos we feel is often the gap created by our own overly conceptual language, our need to label everything.
So the coping mechanism isn't more labels, it's closing that gap through intense, almost nonverbal presence, which is incredibly relevant today when we're constantly defining ourselves externally.
It definitely requires a kind of courage, doesn't it? A willingness to temporarily suspend your internal monologue, to let your carefully constructed definition of reality just dissolve for a second.
Okay, so let's try this. This is the practice, the word loss exercise.
All right. Choose a common, tangible word, something right there maybe, like chair or desk or cup.
Okay.
Now repeat that word. Silently or aloud, doesn't matter. Just repeat it. Chair, chair, chair. Keep going.
Keep repeating it until it starts to feel weird, until it really becomes just a sound, losing its automatic meaning, its function.
Yeah, notice the sensation of the sound itself, totally disconnected from the concept chair. Then try to feel the raw reality it names, the actual physical thing, its weight, its texture, the simple fact of it before the concept snaps back into place.
You're looking for that little gap, that moment of what one source calls beatitude. that state where thinking is momentarily freed from the necessity of form. That silence, that space where reality just flows in. That's the human intimacy.
It's about letting the concept dissolve just enough for the sheer, maybe terrifying, maybe beautiful fact of existence to flood in. It takes a bit of courage, because you're deliberately letting your mental scaffolding waddle for a moment.
Right, micro tool number 2. Let's call this the ordinary epiphany. Lispector seems to teach us that coping with the world's chaos often means perceiving the secret labor of existence and finding it hidden, usually within the utterly banal, the domestic sphere.
We can go back to Anna in a more. Remember, the shock over the blind man has completely shattered her pacified life. She's disturbed.
Right.
And she wanders into the botanical garden, which in Lispector's hands isn't just a pretty park. It's a place of terrifying, unsentimental nature. And there she observes the profound, maybe brutal truth of the ecosystem.
She notes the cruelty of the world was tranquil. She sees the sticky, relentless parasites wrapping around tree trunks, the almost nauseating abundance of luminous dahlias and tulips.
Yeah, she's fascinated and repulsed at the same time by this world just rotting in its richness. It's nature completely without human morality, without the politeness we expect.
She feels this human guilt, thinking about hungry children somewhere else, but she understands the garden operates on a totally different moral code, something else entirely.
A reality defined by constant, quiet cycles of murder, decay, rebirth. One source called it the reality of raw meat, its life stripped bare.
But the real shift, the actual epiphany moment for Anna, isn't in the grand scale of the garden. It's when she gets back home to her kitchen. Near the trash can, she spots a little spider carrying the vase to change its water. This tiny domestic detail.
And then, a moment later, she casually crushes an ant with her foot. She registers it as the little murder of the ant.
That tiny, almost unconscious act of violence.
That reveals the underlying style of life, as one source puts it. The world isn't ordered for our comfort or convenience. It's brutally efficient, maybe indifferent, and we are absolutely part of that mechanism.
So the chaos we fear out there is actually the engine running our lives in here. Whether we acknowledge the tiny murders, the parasitic growth we ignore in our own lives.
Exactly. The insight is, chaos isn't just waiting outside to attack. It is the foundation of life itself, hidden just beneath the surface of our calm domestic arrangements. Like that ant Lispector observed, just carrying a piece of leaf, working away in the mud, unseen.
Okay, so for you, the listener, the practice here is called the tiny murder audit. A bit provocative, maybe?
A little bit. Find a mundane, easily dismissed detail in your immediate surroundings. Could be dust gathering on something, a small insect on the windowsill, a crack in the pavement outside.
Anything easily ignored.
Right. Now, instead of your usual reaction, cleaning it, swatting it, dismissing it, just dedicate your full, non-judgmental attention to it for a moment.
Acknowledge that detail as part of life's underlying non-sentimental style. You're consciously giving presence to the marginal, the overlooked. Lispector wanted to find the invisible in the mud itself.
And this audit, this moment of focused attention on the insignificant, is your way of finding that small, quiet truth that actually sustains the larger, louder chaos we experience.
Okay, so we've looked at contacting the moment through intense attention. That was T1. And recognizing life's underlying, maybe brutal reality in the ordinary, T2. But how do we actually stay in that moment? Especially when our minds are just hardwired to worry about tomorrow.
Ah, yes. The tyranny of the future. Lispector suggests that cage is often the clock. Which brings us to our third tool, non-teleological time.
Teleology.
Yeah.
That just means things moving towards a future goal or purpose, right?
Exactly. So Lispector's thesis here is that a lot of our deep anxiety, that feeling of being overwhelmed by chaos, it starts to dissipate when we consciously abandon that future orientation. When we accept that existence is fundamentally just eternally today.
You see that anxiety about the future so clearly in some of her characters who try to fit into conventional time structures, like Joanna in her very first novel, Near to the Wild Heart. Marriage just completely suffocated her sense of self. She felt her time was being chopped up, split into tiny ice cubes, because her whole existence was forfeited to her husband's expectations, their shared projected future life.
That's such a perfect image for the tyranny of the 5-year plan, isn't it? Or just the relentless pressure of productivity culture. Joanna was living for a future goal, the perfect life, and in doing so, she completely lost the integrity, the reality of the present moment.
Her life became just a collection of frozen, predetermined actions. None of them felt truly her own.
It's like the chaos of the present moment is actually the freedom we often refuse to accept. We fear the uncertainty of now, so we impose the rigidity of the future onto it.
And you can contrast Joanna's suffocation with, well, with Maccabea in The Hour of the Star. The narrator makes this incredible observation about them both. He says, essentially, we live exclusively in the present because it is always eternally today, and tomorrow will be a today.
Whoa. So eternity isn't some far-off, maybe religious concept. It's the absolute, maybe terrifying state of things right now at this very moment.
Yeah. If every future moment is ultimately just another today, then all that anxiety about rushing towards a goal or desperately trying to control the outcome, it kind of dissolves, doesn't it?
It suggests the tension, the chaos we feel, often comes from trying to drag the future prematurely into the now. Trying to force today to perform tomorrow's duty, maybe.
It's like we're constantly borrowing trouble from a future that will just be another present moment anyway.
And while the ability to live in that eternal present might feel like a philosophical luxury for some, for Maccabea, who was excluded from middle-class life and its demands for a planned future, it was just her reality.
That insight feels really powerful, especially for anyone feeling burnt out. That constant sense that the present is never enough, it's only ever a means to some future end.
So the practice here is the eternal today. And this requires some real mental discipline, I think.
Okay, how does it work?
Right. Select a task you're putting off, or maybe just a nagging, anxious thought you have about a future deadline, an event, anything like that.
Got it.
Name that task or thought. Acknowledge its pull, its insistence on a future outcome. No, deliberately shift your focus. Frame your current sensory experience, just the sound of your own breathing, maybe the feeling of the floor beneath your feet, the light on your skin. Frame this moment as eternally today.
Remove the need for the future action to reach a goal.
Yeah.
Just for now.
Exactly. The only purpose of this moment is its own existence. Feel how the anxiety attached to that future goal might momentarily lift just by realizing that right here, right now, you are already in eternity. There's nowhere else to get to.
Let's bring our attention back to the physical world again. Micro tool number 4. Objects as mirrors. The idea here is that tangible, seemingly inert objects, they're far from passive. Lispector sees them as powerful, non-sentimental mirrors. They reflect our true, often difficult choices back at us, and they hold what she calls halted time.
Halted time. I love that. You see this beautifully in her short story, The Imitation of the Rose. The main character, Laura, is recovering from, well, it's an undisclosed illness, probably severe anxiety or a breakdown. And she clings fiercely to this bunch of small, perfect roses she bought for herself.
They're not just decoration, are they? They feel essential to her state.
Totally essential. They symbolize her choice, her fragile independence. They are the one thing that is truly hers, bought in a moment of almost radical self-daring, stepping outside her usual constraints.
And they're complex objects, too. Beautiful, yes, but also possessing delicate and deadly thorns, beauty and danger wrapped up together.
Exactly. And Laura faces this incredibly difficult internal choice. Does she keep the roses for herself, embracing this new, potentially dangerous independence they represent, or does she perform the expected social duty and send them away to a friend?
It's a real dilemma for her.
It is. And she ultimately performs what one source calls an heroic sacrifice. She sends them away, choosing convention over that frightening freedom. The key point is the object, the roses, forced her to confront the independence she both desperately wants and deeply fears.
And the object itself, the roses, they don't care what she chooses, right?
Yeah.
They just reflect the purity of the dilemma back at her.
Precisely. Lispector often viewed objects like this. In The Chandelier, she describes them as prisms of prisms, suggesting they capture and refract all possible angles of reality at once. They're like these fixed points of concentrated, difficult reality.
Containing halted time.
Yes, halted time, meaning the object is like a little storage unit for all the time, the choices, the processes that went into its making, its purchase, its contemplation right now.
Lispector even noted that she loves objects to that degree that they do not love me, highlighting their perfect neutral indifference.
Which is exactly what makes them such powerful tools for clarity when you're caught in internal chaos. They reflect the difficulty of our human choices without offering any easy, comforting sentiment. Their neutrality cuts through the noise.
So if you're struggling with a decision, maybe lost in the chaos of indecision, projecting it onto a neutral object could actually help find some clarity.
That's the idea. So the practice is the object contemplation. Look intently at an object near you right now. A coffee cup, maybe a piece of clothing, even something imperfect like a crack in the wall. First, just recognize that it contains halted time. It exists right here, right now, without any reference to your immediate panic or needs.
Acknowledge its neutrality.
Yes. Now ask yourself, what fundamental choice does this object in its quiet presence force me to confront? For Laura, it was independence versus comfort. For you, maybe it's the choice between staying put and making a change, or between accepting reality and fighting against it.
Let the object's indifference mirror the deepest, maybe most resisted choice you're currently avoiding. See what comes up. All right, our fifth and final micro tool. This one shifts a bit from the purely personal to the ethical, but it still feels intensely practical for coping with our own internal chaos. We're calling it ethical tenderness for the marginal. The core thesis is that truly seeing the suffering and the invisibility of the marginal, the overlooked, the seemingly insignificant, is actually a way to connect with your deepest, most truthful self. And this requires cultivating a kind of ethical saudade.
We should probably unpack saudade a little. It's Portuguese, and it's often translated as nostalgia or longing, but it's much deeper than that, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not just sadness. It's this profound, melancholic, really complex longing for something or someone absent, something that might never return. It carries weight.
And when Lispector connects that feeling to an ethical requirement, well, it means we have a duty almost to confront the painful reality of absence, of overlooked suffering, both in the world and maybe within ourselves.
This is absolutely the engine driving her final novel, The Hour of the Star. The narrator dedicates himself completely to understanding Macabea.
Macabea, the poor immigrant girl from the Northeast living in Rio. She's anonymous, barely registers on the city's radar. She's described as opaque material, quote, despised by everyone. She even smells stale. She is cold coffee, just utterly marginal.
She exists completely outside society's usual systems of attention, order, and value. And the narrator realizes, crucially, that he can't truly understand her reality from his position of relative privilege.
No, he talks about needing to humble himself, almost ritualistically. He tries wearing old, ragged clothes, getting dark circles under his eyes. He's trying to achieve her level of visibility, or rather, invisibility, just to meet her truth, to make genuine contact.
And what's so striking is that his response isn't detached pity. It's this incredibly visceral tenderness. He genuinely wishes he could give her simple comforts. A good bath, a plate of hot soup, a kiss on the forehead.
It's that painful, honest love that allows him to see past her physical desolation, her marginal status.
Right. He realizes that despite her shriveled, malnourished body, she contains an unlimited breath of life. She possesses a kind of grace of a sin in just her simple, unadorned existence, precisely because she's unburdened by social pretense.
So by dedicating his attention fully to this most marginal figure, the narrator doesn't just save her in the narrative, he actually validates his own existence. He finds his defense against the world's indifference and chaos through her.
Which suggests that when we avoid or dismiss the marginal, the tiny, the forgotten, the unseen people or parts of life, we're actually avoiding a piece of our own deepest self. The chaos we feel inside might even be linked to that lack of ethical saudade for the things we refuse to truly see.
That feels right. Which brings us to our final practice for today, the found truth.
Okay, how does this one work?
Find something insignificant or overlooked in your immediate environment. Maybe look outside, see that grass growing stubbornly between paving stones. Or perhaps there's a neglected, dusty plant on a shelf somewhere nearby.
Anything that exists sort of.
Yeah.
In spite of or outside of your main focus, your constructed order?
Exactly. Lispector dedicated her own fierce attention to these kinds of things, always seeking to find the invisible in the mud itself. So dedicate your full, precise attention to that marginal detail you've chosen.
Don't try to romanticize it or find some grand meaning.
Yeah.
Just observe its pure existence, its quiet persistence.
That act of contact, that simple recognition of its life force, however small, that is the found truth, which, for Lispector, is always an inexplicable inner contact, a connection made beyond words.
Okay, we've laid out these 5 micro tools, hopefully showing how Lispector's path to coping with chaos is really rooted in this radical attention, not in rational control. And let's see, this whole philosophy pushed to its extreme, maybe its most terrifying conclusion, in Case Study. Her short story, The Crime of the Mathematics Professor.
Ah, yes. This story is such a perfect, chilling microcosm of her argument. The idea that anxiety isn't just, a personal failing. It's often this deep, compulsive need for control. And that compulsion can lead to violence, to profound spiritual disorder.
So the professor, a man literally defined by order and logic, mathematics being the ultimate structure, he adopts a dog.
And the symbolism here is pretty heavy, isn't it? According to one analysis, the dog represents God, or maybe just the unconditioned truth, the wild, loving, undeniable aspect of existence that absolutely defies definition or control.
So what's the professor's immediate reaction, his compulsion?
He instantly tries to impose structure. He tries to mold and train and create this dog, this wild, unconditioned element, the way he wants.
Which is the classic human move, right? We encounter the divine or the chaotic or just raw nature, and our first instinct is to force it into our predictable boxes, our ideologies.
Exactly. But the real anxiety, the crisis for the professor, arises because the dog loves him, unconditionally. It demands nothing in return.
And for the professor, the logical man, the potentially selfish human who only understands systems of exchange, this pure altruistic love is terrifying.
Utterly terrifying. It completely defies his system of order, his need for control. It's chaos in its purest, most beautiful, and therefore most threatening form.
And this unbearable tension culminates in violence.
Yes, the professor, frustrated and maybe terrified by this love he cannot contain or calculate, literally throws a book at the dog.
And the book is symbolic too.
Very likely. It could be the word of God, or any rigid ideology, any doctrine, any system he uses to try and control the animal's essential unconditional nature. He throws his system at the thing he cannot categorize or subdue.
The dog eventually dies, a kind of silent casualty of the professor's desperate need for order. But here's the twist, the part that really defines Lispector's often unsettling vision of freedom.
Right. After abandoning the dog, which can be read as abandoning faith, or abandoning that rigid covenant, or just abandoning the need for a controlled relationship with the unconditioned telenary, the man simply got up, shook the earth from his hands, and did not look back.
Wow. It's a moment of profound and terrible clarity.
He believes he's been punished for his crime, the crime of trying to contain the uncontainable, but in that act of letting go, of accepting the failure of his system, he is finally radically free.
Free not because he won or achieved control, but because he accepted the limits of his own system.
Exactly. So the final takeaway, maybe the core lesson for coping with chaos, is brutal but practical. Unconditional reality or love or just being is the core truth. But recognizing the flawed nature of our own control systems, our ideologies, our rules, our attempts to shape the unconditioned, that recognition is what ultimately leads to freedom.
Chaos gives way not to more control, but to a kind of radical acceptance, even acceptance of failure.
Which really underscores how demanding, how radical her philosophy is. Okay, so let's take that toolkit now and use it to quickly challenge 3 common assumptions we tend to hold about managing our inner chaos. Ready for some rapid-fire myth-busting.
Let's do it. Myth number 1. You must be calm and balanced to achieve any real insight. We often wait for that perfect, quiet moment to reflect, to find ourselves.
Debunked. For Lispector, the deepest insights are almost always born directly out of acute pain, out of discord, out of what she herself called horror. She wrote about her horror of life, of this life I love so much.
So the struggle isn't something to overcome before insight.
Not at all. The struggle is the site of insight. One source describes her writing style as allegro con brio, lively, with vigor. The process of paying attention for her isn't some gentle meditative retreat. It's an energetic, almost manic confrontation with the raw nerve of existence. Chaos is the fuel, not the obstacle.
Okay. Myth number 2. Our feelings, and even our sense of self, are strictly limited by our physical body. We tend to define ourselves by our skin, our location, our immediate physical sensations.
Debunked. Lispector's characters constantly seem to transcend these physical boundaries. It suggests the self is far more porous, more permeable than we usually admit. Think back to Joanna in Near to the Wild Heart. She says she feels dispersed in the atmosphere, thinking inside other creatures, living inside things beyond myself.
The self just flows out into the chaos of the world. It's not neatly contained.
Exactly. And even Macabea, who was starving, physically diminished. Her shriveled body still contained that unlimited breath of life. Lispector suggests the self is constantly bleeding into the atmosphere, into other lives, blurring the line between internal and external chaos. The body is a container, maybe, but it doesn't contain the whole truth of who we are.
All right, myth number 3. Achieving self-knowledge is inherently peaceful and liberating. This feels like the bedrock myth of the whole self-help industry, right?
It really does. But Lispector, well, she pushes back hard.
Debunked. But wait, this sounds counterintuitive to everything we've just said. If we achieve this terrifying precision of attention, shouldn't we find some kind of peace? Liberation?
You'd think so. But Lispector argues quite radically the exact opposite. She believed that achieving true lucidity, completely unvarnished self-knowledge, can actually be a form of uselessness. It can often lead directly to despair.
Uselessness. Despair. Why? Why would the truth be despairing?
Because, according to her view, to truly know oneself completely might mean losing the mystery, the enigma, the unknowability that she felt was essential for the building of identity.
We need the unknown parts.
We need that mystery to construct a functional self, perhaps. Her precision of attention isn't necessarily a path to comfort or bliss. It's a path to a more difficult, more honest, and maybe more terrifying confrontation with reality. The reality that maybe we don't want to exist, or that our existence is ultimately arbitrary or just strange.
So the liberation comes not from peace, but from a radical acceptance of the difficulty, maybe even the despair.
That seems to be closer to her view. It's liberation through honesty, however brutal that honesty might be.
Wow. Okay, that is a staggering conclusion. But it's precisely why Lispector offers such a potent, if demanding, toolkit for coping with chaos in a real way. So, if you, listening, are ready to embrace that difficult truth, maybe dip your toes into her work. Where's a good place to start? It can seem intimidating.
It really can. For accessibility, for a slightly clearer entry point, the general consensus seems to be The Hour of the Star.
Her last novel.
Yes, it's very slim. And while the plot ostensibly focuses on Maccabea, the truly marginalized character we discussed, the real substance is in the style, the experimentation, the narrator's constant wrestling with the philosophical act of writing itself.
It's the closest she gets to a conventional narrative, maybe, even though the narrator's constantly interrupting and analyzing everything.
Exactly. Now, if you're feeling brave, if you're ready for that challenging, pure dive into the nucleus of the instant, to really feel the linguistic chaos and philosophical intensity, then try Agua Viva, Living Water.
But be warned, right? It's not a typical novel.
Not at all. It's often classified as nonfiction or just a collection of appuntamento notes, fragments. Its original manuscript was actually titled Objeto Gritante.
Screaming object.
Screaming object. That tells you pretty much everything you need to know about its intense, uncontained energy. It's pure philosophical immersion, almost no narrative thread to hang on to.
And one really important practical note for reading Lispector in English. Translations matter. Hugely.
Oh, absolutely critical. Many of her major works have received excellent new translations recently, particularly those by Katrina Dodson. Because Lispector's style depends so heavily on the unique rhythms, the ambiguities, the textures of the Portuguese language, that moist fog we talked about, finding those newer, highly praised translations is really essential.
It makes a world of difference in capturing the true Lispectorian feel, that unique voice. The nuance is everything.
Ultimately, Lispector's goal, it seems, was never to make the world feel tidy or manageable. It was to force us, gently or not so gently, to experience life raw.
Right.
And she gives us these tools, these small but powerful acts of radical attention, maybe just to help us handle that sheer, terrifying, beautiful aliveness without completely short-circuiting.
Let's go back one last time to Anna in Amor. At the very end of her crisis, she's passed through the shock, the hell of confronting the blind man, the chaos of the botanical garden. She's back in her apartment, her domestic space. She's combing her hair in the mirror. She's survived.
And this is that critical moment of return, of integrating the chaos. We're guided to recognize that brief pause, that space of quiet acceptance. Anna combs her hair, standing there for an instant with no world at all in her heart before she goes to bed.
No world at all in her heart. Empty of the striving, the control, the anxiety, just present.
And then Lispector gives us that final, simple image. A small ritual of closure, of control, but maybe a different kind now. As if putting out a candle, the text says, she blew out the little flame of the day.
You can return to the routine, the pacified existence, but you're changed. You know now what lies just beneath the surface. That unconditioned chaos is always there, waiting.
And this brings us to our final provocative thought for you today. Lispector, apparently in her own final moments, seemed to hold this belief that life's raw materials, the essential things we search for, they mostly remain hidden from us during life. Yet she saw death not merely as an end, but as a kind of final, ultimate aliveness. Why? Because, as one source puts it, she believed all life's electrified secrets are finally revealed upon reaching its threshold.
Wow. So her whole lifelong project, all that deep analysis, that relentless searching for the nucleus of a single instant was, in a strange way, a kind of preparation, rehearsal for that ultimate instant of dying, for final clarity.
It's a powerful, maybe unsettling way to think about it. So we leave you with this question. What electrified secrets are you rehearsing for now? In this single, terrifying, beautiful, ordinary instant.
Keep asking the difficult questions, keep paying attention,
Are they-
and we'll keep diving deep.